March 17, 1943, Detroit, Michigan. The city didn't sleep anymore. The hum of engines and the hiss of molten steel filled the air like a heartbeat. Inside the massive Ford Rouge plant, sparks rained down like fire from a foundry hell, thousands of workers moving in perfect rhythm, building tanks faster than Germany could destroy them. That night, a group of captured German officers stepped inside and froze. One of them whispered, This is not an army, it's an entire nation at war." March 17, 1943, Detroit, Michigan. The city never slept anymore. From the air, it looked like a vast iron lung breathing smoke and light, foundries glowing red through the night, rail yards trembling under the weight of tank hulls, and the endless hum of America's war machine echoing for miles. Inside the Ford River Rouge complex, steam hissed, rivets cracked, and molten steel poured in blinding arcs. Conveyor belts rattled like clockwork snakes, moving faster than the eye could follow. Women in overalls wiped sweat from their brows. Boys too young for the front hammered away beside men too old to fight, all bound by the same rhythm, the same urgency. And walking among them, flanked by 2 U.S. Army escorts, were 5 captured German officers, men of the Wehrmacht and Luftwaffe, their boots still dusted with the mud of Tunisia. Colonel Heinrich Voss of the Afrika Korps adjusted his cap, eyes darting between the endless rows of workers. "This can't be real," he muttered under his breath in German. "No army can sustain this pace." But the American officer beside him only smiled. "Colonel, this isn't an army," he said. "This is Detroit." The group moved past a line where M4 Sherman turrets were being hoisted onto hulls by massive cranes. Sparks cascaded in fountains of light. On the catwalk above, a woman guided the crane's hook with calm precision, chewing gum and listening to a swing tune blaring from a nearby radio. Voss watched her, and then the next worker, and the next. They weren't soldiers, they weren't coerced. They worked because they wanted to, because somewhere overseas, their brothers, sons, or husbands were waiting for the machines these hands were building. Heinrich whispered to the Luftwaffe major beside him, "We have no equivalent of this. Not in Berlin, not anywhere." The major said nothing. His eyes followed the belts, the workers, the speed. A foreman's sleeves rolled up, voice hoarse from shouting, barked orders at his crew. "Keep those treads moving. We've got a shipment to Norfolk by morning." Every word was swallowed by the roar of engines being tested just a few yards away, hundreds of them. The air smelled of oil and ozone, hot steel and human resolve. The floor trembled with the rhythm of machinery. Everywhere, signs hung from the rafters in bold, black letters. "The enemy is LISTNING, but so are our boys overseas. Keep it moving, the front line STARTS here." One German officer stopped to stare at the banners, his jaw clenched. In Germany, he'd seen similar slogans, but painted by order, not conviction. Then came the moment none of them would forget. The tour reached the assembly floor, where brand new B-24 Liberators gleamed under floodlights. Their silver wings stretched across the hangar like the arms of a sleeping giant. Workers swarmed over them, welding, painting, checking rivets, all under a single shift supervisor shouting over the din. "How many men work this line?" one of the Germans asked through an interpreter. "Men," the American escort grinned. "You mean people, 18,003 shifts, round the clock." "3 shifts. "That's right," the officer replied. "This place doesn't close, hasn't since Pearl Harbor." Colonel Voss turned slowly, looking across the massive hangar, the endless movement, the tireless rhythm, the light. He felt something heavy in his chest, something he hadn't felt since before the war. It wasn't fear, it was realization. This wasn't propaganda, this wasn't a single plant, it was the beating heart of a continent. A machine that never slept, never faltered, fed by freedom, fueled by fury. He leaned closer to the interpreter, his voice quiet. "Tell your officer," Voss said, "that I understand now why we will lose. The American didn't hear the translation, but he saw the look in the colonel's eyes. That was enough. Outside, the night was bright with the glow of 1,000 furnaces. Detroit was awake, and so was the war. The convoy of army trucks rolled through the city streets toward another plant, the Chrysler Tank Arsenal in Warren, Michigan. Even at midnight, the sky pulsed orange from the forge fires. The Germans had never seen an industrial skyline so alive. From the truck bed, Colonel Voss watched the blur of motion beyond the window. Factory gates opening, trains groaning with crates of steel, workers flooding in and out as if day and night had merged into one endless shift. At the gate, a large banner flapped in the cold spring wind. Every minute counts, build to win. Inside, the arsenal's floor was a cathedral of noise. Sparks shot upward in fountains of blue-white fire as rows of welders sealed the seams of new M4 Sherman tanks. Engines thundered on test beds, while mechanics tuned them with wrenches longer than their arms. The German officers stood stunned. It wasn't just the scale, it was the order. Every movement seemed synchronized. Cranes swung in perfect timing, conveyors clanked like clockwork, and teams of workers moved with military precision. Major Kruger, the Luftwaffe officer, leaned close to Voss. In Germany, this kind of plant would require 100 inspectors, he said. Voss nodded slowly. Here they don't need inspectors, he replied. They have pride. A foreman led them through a section where entire tank turrets were being fitted, one after another, like toys in an assembly line. Each tank was painted with a stenciled name: Chicago Belle, Rossi's Revenge, the Iron Duke. A young woman in a bandana waved as they passed. She couldn't have been more than 20. Built that one myself, she shouted above the noise, pointing at a freshly painted Sherman. Voss lifted his cap in polite acknowledgement, though he couldn't find words. The officer beside him muttered in disbelief, "Women building tanks." The American guide chuckled. "You bet. Rossi the Riveter's not just a poster. She's real, thousands of her." They crossed a narrow catwalk over the testing pit, where engines roared as mechanics revved them to full power. The sound shook the metal floor. "Each of those engines will be in France before Christmas," the guide said. Voss gripped the railing. "Impossible," he murmured. "You cannot move this many machines across an ocean." The officer smiled faintly. "We already are." The German colonel fell silent. His mind raced with numbers, fuel, transport ships, steel, labor. None of it added up. The Reich struggled to produce a handful of tanks each week under bombing raids and resource shortages. Yet here, on the far side of the world, this factory alone was producing hundreds. At the end of the catwalk, the tour halted before a massive window overlooking the final assembly line. Below, the tanks rolled forward one after another, complete, fueled, engines roaring. Every 90 minutes, a new Sherman left the floor. A U.S. Army captain pointed to a clock high on the wall. "See that? We call it the Liberty Clock. Every tick means another tank, another truck, another plane ready to ship out." The German officers exchanged glances. To them, the sound of ticking no longer marked time, it marked defeat. Colonel Voss closed his eyes for a moment. In his mind, he saw the ruins of Essen and Cologne, the bombed-out factories, the shortages of coal and oil. And here, this unstoppable tide of steel and energy. When he opened his eyes again, he saw an old man in coveralls tightening bolts on a tank tread. His hands were trembling from age, but his jaw was set with purpose. "Why does he work?" Voss asked quietly. The guide shrugged. "Because his son in the 3rd Army. He says every bolt he turns brings him home faster." Voss turned away. "Then we have already lost," he whispered. Outside the plant, the convoy passed another line of trains, flat cars stacked with crates marked Springfield Armory and General Motors. Each car bore the stamp, U.S. War Department Priority A. The German colonel stared out into the glowing horizon, the fires, the smoke, the endless light of an industrial giant awake through the night. He thought of Hitler's speeches, of Goebbels' boasts about total war, and suddenly those words felt hollow. Because this was total war. A war waged by every man, woman, and machine in a land too vast to silence, too determined to stop. And for the first time since the war began, Heinrich Voss felt something he had never felt before. Not pride, not anger, but awe. April 2nd, 1943, Washington, D.C. 2 weeks after their tour of Detroit, the group of captured German officers was escorted to the War Department for a final debrief before being transferred to a prisoner of war camp in Pennsylvania. They had seen the heart of America's industry, and now they were about to see its brain. The convoy passed through the clean, ordered avenues of the capital, polished cars, billboards urging buy war bonds, boys in khaki uniforms saluting soldiers on street corners. There was no rubble, no fear, no blackout curtains, only energy. Inside the War Department's briefing room, a young American major in neatly pressed khakis addressed them through an interpreter. "We understand this visit may have been surprising," he said with a faint smile. "But what you've seen in Detroit, that's just one part of it. We've got plants in Buffalo, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Seattle, all doing the same thing." Voss didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on a wall map, hundreds of red pins marking shipyards, airfields, tank arsenals, and ammunition works. The map stretched from one end of the wall to the other. "How many workers?" he asked quietly. The major raised an eyebrow. "In war production, roughly 60 million men and women." 60 million. Voss's lips parted slightly. That was almost the population of Germany itself. He turned to his fellow officers, Kruger, the Luftwaffe major, and a naval commander named Bauer. None spoke. They didn't need to. The realization was mutual, silent, and crushing. The American major continued, almost casually. "Every minute somewhere in this country, we build another rifle. Every 5 minutes, another truck. Every hour, another tank or plane. And it doesn't stop, not at night, not for weekends, not for anything." He glanced toward the interpreter. "Tell them this, our factories don't sleep because our boys can't afford to." Voss finally looked up. "Do you know what that means?" he asked softly, his German accent thick with disbelief. The major paused. "What does it mean to you, Colonel?" Voss took a long breath. "It means the war is already decided. We just haven't admitted it yet." The room fell silent. Even the interpreter hesitated before translating. The Americans simply nodded. "Maybe, but until it's over, we'll keep building." That night, as the train carried them north toward their POW camp, the German officers sat in the dim light of the carriage, each lost in his thoughts. The rhythmic clatter of the rails felt almost like the pulse of the factories they had seen, steady, endless, inescapable. Outside, the dark countryside was punctuated by flashes of distant furnaces, the glow of the arsenal of democracy stretching far into the night. Major Kruger broke the silence. "All those people," he said, "women, children, even the old, working like soldiers." Voss nodded. "No," he said quietly, "better than soldiers, they fight without firing a shot." The train slowed as it crossed a river bridge. Below, massive barges carried tanks east toward the ports. The Americans guarding them barely looked up. It was routine now, as natural as breathing. Voss leaned his head against the cold glass. In the reflection, he saw his own face, tired, defeated, but strangely calm. He thought of the young woman in the factory who had built a tank with her own hands. He thought of the foreman shouting orders at midnight, of the old man turning his bolts for his son overseas. And he understood. Germany had soldiers, America had a nation. When the train finally reached the camp gates at dawn, Voss stepped out and turned once more toward the east, where the sun was rising over the smoke-stained horizon. He whispered to himself in a voice only he could hear. "This is not an army, it's an entire people at war."